That's quite difficult to predict at the moment. Nobody really knows. Brexit itself will bring a massive change in our lives, not only in Britain, but generally. And any change in life goes hand in hand with panic, uncertainty. So it's going to be a little bit bumpy ride. And in order to avoid any bumpy ride, I would suggest that vendors, buyers, landlords, tenants stay calm, that people just do not panic, that people do not let emotion to go over rational thinking.
I think there is a lot of nervousness at the moment. Change makes people afraid. In actual fact, I've seen a lot of things saying, keep calm and carry on. And whilst that's perhaps a trite thing to say, the sentiment is absolutely right. At the moment, there is no need to panic because there was no change overnight on the 23rd of June. All that's happened is that the British electorate has gone out and given its opinion to Parliament, who invited them to do that. Nothing stopped. We didn't leave the EU on the 24th. Yes, there are going to be things that happen, but for the time being, please don't panic.
I personally do not expect a rental market to stagnate or to drop in this area. This area is a very strong area, very, I would say, economically stable. Albeit many international tenants may have got spooked by Britain leaving EU. I would like to put a message out that Britain has decided to leave EU, but Britain has not decided to leave Europe and disconnect from Europe as such.
First things first, the outer's won. We've got to accept that and move on. My own personal opinion is we're going to look back in 5 years' time and say that's the best thing we've ever done. Now, my father is Welsh, my mother is French, my great-grandmother was Spanish, my great-grandfather was Italian, and my great-great-grandfather was Moroccan. I was born in Warwick. I don't have a drop of English blood in me, but I have a huge amount of European blood, so I suppose I've been European from day one. How is it going to affect me? I'm, in papers, I'm in theory semi-retired, but I've never been so busy. Part of it is the photography, which is very much localised. I can't see it impacting on that whatsoever. The other part of it is the travel writing, and 70% of that travel writing is based in Europe, though predominantly France. The French have indicated they might follow us. It may well be that what we've done is open the doors for the end of Europe. Who knows? And it's too early to say. Am I going to have to queue up if I drive across to Calais? Am I going to have to queue up to get into what is called to my own country?
How is Brexit going to affect my business? Two things I've noticed in the past week. The first is I haven't sold an ebook all week, which is unusual. I sell one or two most days as a rule, and I'm currently having my longest ever dry patch. Could be a complete coincidence, or it might just be that people's minds and thoughts are elsewhere and not in the Kindle store. The other thing is that I was hoping for a decision for a potential large piece of work last Friday, and the message I got was, all our decision makers are in emergency meetings, so we'll get back to you next week. It's now Wednesday and that hasn't happened yet. So people are being distracted, obviously. So the impact on my business, that's what's happened so far. The impact on the learning and development profession as a whole in the longer term, I don't have a crystal ball, but I can hazard some guesses, if you like. It's going through massive changes anyway, the way we train people, how people learn. The learner is becoming much more of a consumer, and companies are always looking for ways of cutting their training budget. And yes, of course, in recession, that has happened in the past. One good thing that came out of the last recession, and I think will happen again now, is that people are taking longer to make decisions. But I think that sometimes that means they're making better decisions for the long term. Because it used to really frustrate me when employers would say, oh, come in and train our staff, and, you know, without giving it much thought, and they didn't really want to explore what their needs were and how I could meet their needs. It's just like, come and do something. That doesn't happen anymore. What happens now is people spend time thinking, do we really need to spend this money, and what will we get out of it? Which, as someone who wants to give value for money, I think is really important. So I think we'll be back there. I think sheep dipping staff all doing the same training will again get less and less. But specifically, it's going to be really interesting because there's always people screaming about skill shortages, and those shortages will need to be met somehow. So it could be absolute opportunities for trainers and people that deliver other forms of learning. So that's a possibility. My own thought, and I know it's based out of my own experience, as you know, I mainly train managers and leaders, is that managers are going to have to work harder, because, you know, managing a team of people that are basically okay is one thing, but managing a team where people are upset and distracted, and there's lots more of emotions being thrown around the workplace, which we're already seeing is leading to inappropriate behaviour. The manager has somehow got to deal with the inappropriate behaviour. He's got to try and get the people focused on their work. He's got to try and listen to them and see where they're at so he knows how best to respond to them, as well as try and improve the environment so that it is a positive environment for the people at work.
Universities in the UK were pretty well united that they wanted to stay in, and they felt that there were big risks with leaving to universities, partly through recruitment of EU students and partly from recruitment of non-EU students. And additionally, British universities get a lot of European grant funding. And I guess that out of the EU, we would no longer be eligible to apply for that grant funding. So university vice-chancellors were pretty well united in that they wanted to remain in the EU. As regards how it'll affect universities, well, of course, you know, who knows? It's still unfolding daily, so we don't really know what the implications are going to be. My university, Royal Holloway, has put out a communication reassuring students that nothing is going to change in the medium term, and that EU students who've had places offered to them this year or next will still keep their place, and they'll still pay the same level of fees. So I'm sure many other universities are doing the same thing to reassure existing students. In the longer term, we don't know. And of course, since immigration was such a major part of the Brexit debates and arguments, that's going to be quite an interesting issue, because the one thing that irritated all universities about Theresa May and her policies as Home Secretary was that she insisted on keeping students in the annual immigration figures. And this seemed to universities to be a bit strange, because the great majority go back home, and the few that stay tend to get a job for which they're well qualified, and then go through the process. You know, many of those would go through the process to get citizenship eventually, and so forth. So it's a bit curious, and I think there's about 180,000 students who come to the UK each year. So this, of course, makes the figure for immigration look very, very large. And certainly, I think Theresa May was arguing that some not some universities, I'd say some private institutions have been a front for visa fraud, and bringing people in on the pretext of being students who are actually not.
If people, I understand that people may be worried, may be concerned, and whether they are landlords or they just want to know any updates on the property market. I do run property club. It's called Bicester Property Club purely because it's being held in Bicester. However, it offers the knowledge on the property to anybody from the White, North Oxfordshire area, Warwickshire areas, basically anybody who wants to come to the club. We will be discussing the issues of what Brexit means to the property. We will be getting experts, economists, and property investors with the experience talking at the Bicester Property Club. So if anybody wants to keep up to date with what is happening in the property market after Brexit, I'd suggest you come along, you meet experts, you meet other people. If I may to say, the website is www.bisterpropertyclub.co.uk.
Oh, first of all, let me comment on your countryside. It is beautiful. My wife and I, we've been here 7 years. My wife and I just applied for and got our leave to remain. In the United States, it would be referred to as a green card. After this referendum, which we were thinking that we were British and European, commonly we now wonder if we're merely English. This is a very quite an odd outcome that has no direction yet as to where it may go. An American outlook.
I've worked in British universities and colleges for 30 years now. I've taught international students on my courses for about 20 years. I've honestly only known one who decided to become illegal and disappeared from the course in all that time. And she was a young lady who found another source of income. And other than that, the students they're learning skills and developing earning high qualifications that the British economy really needs, and they don't displace any British people. They, some of them start businesses, and some of them go back to work in their parents' businesses and so forth. So I don't see that logic at all. And international students, non-EU students, and EU students are all a bit worried about where Brexit will lead them. I think it's too early to tell exactly how they'll need to respond. For the moment, I guess the emphasis is on reassurance of students. Certainly, I think the EU grants people have put out a communication to assure current grant holders that the projects will not be discontinued, that they will continue for their full term. So at least people have some certainty around that. But most grant-funded projects are between 1 and 5 years. After that, we still don't know yet, because every detail has got to be renegotiated with the EU. So we're in a very strange situation of flux where nobody quite knows what the long-term future is going to hold. But certainly universities were, as I said before, they were foursquare in favour of staying in the EU, and so people will be wondering how they need to react in the future. Yeah.
I know that there have been reports of increased racism, which, by the way, upsets me no end. Really upsets me purely because it just highlighted the issues that Britain had, which we either didn't see or ignored. However, I think this is minority given the vast number of people living in the country, and the only thing we can do is not to take that personally. Britain will always, in my view, welcome the people from other countries who come and work here and who come and contribute to the society, and therefore I would encourage international tenants not to be put off by current turmoil that is caused by only number of individuals. Therefore, from the rental perspective, I don't expect any major issues, any major hiccups in this area.
Currency will always fluctuate, and it always has done. It hasn't affected anything as of yet. So, as and when it does or doesn't, we will deal with it, and it'll all be taken into account.
We've recosted some holidays that people had inquired about and hadn't yet booked. So we rechecked everything, and it automatically amends to the current cost. there was absolutely no change at all. If anything, a couple of them went down. So we don't foresee any major issues, if we're really honest.
In the short term, we are a little bit concerned about the exchange rate. As a company, we buy quite a lot from the States, far less than we sell there. So that has an impact because the cost of what we buy is going to rise. But that should only be a short-term thing, and is something most businesses don't work so tightly with. When you have an exchange rate, you build in some margin of things dropping off, so that if it does fall for a few months, as happens from time to time, when the general election was on last year, the exchange rate dropped and then it recovered over a few months. You just have to weather these things. But if that carries on long term, then it will be an interesting one, because we'll have to review prices. But as a company that sells overseas as well as buying, some of our products we may have to increase the price of, but some of them we may be able to drop the price of. And therefore, where one side of the income may drop because a product becomes slightly more expensive, another part of the business might be able to gain by being slightly more competitive to people buying from abroad. And I think that's the key thing with all business aspects, that it's all in balance. Some people are very fortunate in that they only export, and in the current climate that's going to be great for them. And other companies who perhaps only import may find it difficult in the short term. But I think it won't take long before things start to settle down, and we'll be able to carry on as we did before and carry on growing.
As expected, the value of the sterling has been hit, and that can lead to inflationary pressures, and that could force increase rates to go up in future. However, most economists they predict that lower growth and investors' desire for safe assets would bring rates going down, and as such, short term, the interest rates are expected to drop. There is a prediction that the rates are expected to go down 0.25% in July, with possibility of another rate drop to go down over next 6 months to 0.5, even 0 rate, which would mean that UK mortgage rates could fall further. And this is great news for people who are looking to buy, whether they are looking to buy a residential property to live, whether they are first-time buyers or they want to move up the ladder, or they want to increase their investment property portfolio or start investing. So not everything is doom and gloom. Of course, media like the sensation, and therefore media will be spilling at us all the most horrible stories, but they will be reluctant to share positive stories.
This morning, quick glance at the news before we came this morning. Share prices are all back up to where they were last Thursday. Exchange rates are drifting up. I did a big shop in Tesco's yesterday. My camembert and my croissant, my pasta didn't really cost any more than they cost last week. So how's it going to affect me? The honest answer is I just do not know. Not as much as I think people are frightened about. It's interesting, there was a wee bit on the news last night, or on the television last night, about families falling out over it. Now, my daughter lives in Switzerland. Her husband works for an American company who have a office in Southampton, who said that they'll pull out. Samantha and I, we probably came as close to falling out yesterday as we've ever done in 30 years. She's worried, and there's this hoo-ha that us old farts voted to keep, to bugger up the future of the youngsters. But if they chose not to vote, they chose not to vote. The other side of the thing, I don't know if you saw that Boeing, the biggest aircraft manufacturer in the world, they just announced they're moving their European HQ to Britain. The other side of the coin, Vodafone today announced that if we come out, they'll move their offices abroad. So, there's an awful lot. the City of London is the strongest financial area in the world. It always will be. It has been for many hundred years. Those folks in this country in the hotel trade, in the restaurant trade, in the retail trade, they've got a couple of years of really making some serious money, because all of a sudden we are such an attractive destination for Europeans to come on holiday. Yeah, perhaps as a travel writer, I should be writing for foreign magazines telling people to come to Banburyshire. Where else? What's he going to do? I don't know. I don't think anybody knows.
I think the things to do are to make sure your business doesn't fall into any sort of state of inertia. So don't stop. Productivity is really important. Keep an eye on your cash flow. If you think you should be making a plan, make that plan, because you've got plenty of time to do it. That's what I'm doing for my business, and that's what I'm telling everybody that I know to get out there and do. It is business as usual. Keep going.
We, as business people, need to take full responsibility for our businesses, no matter what is happening in the society and with politics, and we just need to continue striving and be leaders in the community, be of the encouragement to others, because this is only way how we can all survive and continue striving.
It's going to be an interesting one over the next few months, years. The first thing I'd like people not to do is to panic. There seems to be a lot of panicking about what's going to happen, what isn't going to happen. At the moment, not a lot has changed really, and most of us just carry on with life as normal. But unfortunately, the people in the stock market don't react like that, and therefore the currency drops, share prices drop off. But for most of us day to day, that'll come back to normal over the next few months, and hopefully it will just be business as normal.
A couple of decades ago, I think the first time I was asked to go and run a day's training on managing change, and I said, well, okay, what's the change? Well, this funding's disappearing, that's happening. So what are we changing to? Well, we don't know that. And it's the same thing. It's not managing change. It's holding uncertainty and being able to survive and thrive in that uncertainty. And that's where I think managers will need the most help. And I'm picking on the managers because one thing that came out of 2008 was there's a lot of research into how do we get people to perform better and companies be more productive when we can't throw money at the problem, which used to be the government's way. We'll chuck some money to an underfunded training scheme or something, and that doesn't happen anymore. And what came out of that was the engaging manager, the manager that looks out for his people and builds those relationships. So the manager and the leaders won't be able to say, this is definitely what's going to happen, but they can tell the story of where they've been and how they've survived and how they've got this far, and this is how we're going to cope and build those relationships and strengthen them to get the loyalty of the people.
I believe that no matter what happens in life, we have to always look at the opportunity. I really like something from Chinese language. In Chinese language, there is a symbol for crisis, and the same symbol means opportunity. It is up to you, up to us, up to every single individual of this community, of this country, how we will look at the situation. Will we look at the situation as a crisis, and will we continue attacking each other, or will we take it as an opportunity and make the most out of the situation and make out of the situation what we can. Distinct estate agents will strive to continue finding the opportunities in order to serve the best our clients, as we have always done. If we have to look at our business from different angle, we will. As I have said, we have survived recession, we will survive Brexit.
It's basically business as usual. It hasn't affected us in any way at all, and we don't foresee it to. We're still busier than ever. It's obviously late booking season that we're in at the moment, and it's all very positive. We're as busy as we've always have been.
Yeah. I think that, that question is, who knows? And that's probably potentially the same for every business. Lindsay and I personally, and travel counsellors, are, we have a fantastically successful business company. they will put into place anything that needs putting into place, which will then obviously assist us with continuing to run our business the way that we do. I'm sure in time there will be some legislation changes that will need to be made within the travel industry. However, at this stage, we haven't seen any changes whatsoever. So we're really positive about the future. And to be fair, we've been through some pretty major things in our travel career, such as Gulf War and 9/11, which were, horrendous. So we're business as usual.
And all our customers are still fully financially protected, whatever they always have been and they always will be. So booking with us, they will have 100% financial protection. And they'll have us to help them along the way.
Just to conclude, I am an entrepreneur, and I therefore will continue striving and driving distinct estate agents and being contribution in this community no matter what. And I would like to encourage everybody to show the leadership, be leader in the community, and do absolutely the same. Sharkanai Vertova, distinct estate agents.